South Salt Lake City, Utah, November 2010. Earl Black returns to his wife's bookstore on their property to find her brutally murdered.
It's hard to imagine for a stranger coming upon such a scene, but imagine if this were your wife, your husband, your loved one, lying on the floor, having been stabbed more than a dozen times.
It is a traumatic scene. Earl's wife, 64-year-old Sherry Black, has been beaten and stabbed to death.
I know he never spent another night in that home, and I can't imagine what he's had to live with, having that image of her in his mind.
The local community is terrorized by the knowledge that there could be a killer among them. Detectives spring into action to track down the unknown assailant.
Is this something that was just personal? Was this just a robbery that maybe went bad? Or is this somebody that's in the community that's going to do this again?
Criminals who have hidden in the shadows discover that there's no escaping science and their own family DNA. Welcome to Bloodline Detectives. Salt Lake City, Utah, a city with a rich history steeped in theology and spirituality.
Salt Lake City, the capital of Utah, was founded by Mormons who were fleeing persecution elsewhere in the country. And Salt Lake became a major center in the Rocky Mountains, a host of the Olympic Games some years ago. South Salt Lake is a very small town, just a few square miles, but with some problems of its own, a higher crime rate, some gang problems, and not quite the image I think that Salt Lake itself would like to project.
It felt safe growing up there. As I got married and moved on, it felt less families and more of kind of a transient, in and out kind of people.
We have a number of different cities within our agency. So as far as the number of cases we get, it varies from year to year. We may have a year with 2 or 3 homicides. We may have a year with 13 or 14 or 15 homicides. As far as other violent crimes, yes, we have rapes, we have robberies, we have burglaries. We have really what any other police agency probably has, even in bigger cities, but probably a little bit less in Salt Lake than like Chicago or New York.
Thursday, November the 30th, 2010, 1:30 p.m. Police receive a disturbing phone call from a local resident.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Oh, my wife's been murdered.
What address is this at?
3466 South 700 East.
Okay, repeat the address for verification. Okay,
Pardon?
is she awake?
No, she's dead.
Okay, is she breathing at all?
No, she's dead. She's cold. Oh, my God.
Earl Black came home that afternoon. He left for work that morning, said goodbye to his wife, who was still in her pajamas, and got back, and like any husband coming home would probably be calling out, "Hey, I'm back, I'm home." Started looking for her in the house, could not find her, went into the bookshop adjacent to the house, and worked his way back from the front door through this warren of little areas where books were stacked and shelved to the storeroom where his wife kept her work area and her most valuable books, and found her dead, murdered, slaughtered on the floor.
You can hear the frustration in his voice. He is extremely upset, which is understandable. He indicated that his wife has been murdered. He indicated that he had removed a pair of shearing scissors that were embedded in her chest. The dispatcher was trying to provide Earl with information as far as, and trying to collect information for responding police officers that were responding to that scene.
He kept saying, "My wife has been killed, my wife has been killed," and you heard the operator say, "Is she breathing?" He kept repeating in frustration, "My wife has been killed."
Is there any serious bleeding?
Oh, just get here.
Okay, I do have help on the way. You need to. I need to ask you some more questions just to get help started. Okay.
No, just get here.
Okay, I have help on the way too.
When he entered in and found Sherry lying on her back in the back west room of the bookstore, he removed the scissors, and after he removed the scissors, he was wearing a brown leather jacket at the time, and removed that and covered her with the brown leather jacket.
That's exactly what I think any of us would do, to cover up, to give her a sense of decency in this slaughterhouse of death. And so South Salt Lake City police, of course, showed up, and then detectives showed up. This was a grotesque murder, and obviously from the get-go, a complicated one.
At that point, the officers would have gone into the scene to determine if there's any other suspects, the condition of Sherry, and then to back out of the scene once the medical had arrived and sent somebody in to verify that she was actually deceased. Everybody would have backed out and locked that residence and bookstore down to preserve the evidence at the scene. Walking into these scenes, it's really important to just try to keep an open mind, because we really don't want to get ourselves set up in a situation where we're focused on it's going to have to be this, trying to fit that square peg through the round hole. So it's really important in these types of cases to keep an open mind, because it can take us anywhere at that point.
South Salt Lake City police call in for assistance from Utah Bureau of Forensic Services, who arrive on scene.
We need to know some basic information regarding the type of crime and the basic things that they think occurred at the scene. Most importantly, where the evidence was found.
They would take photos and collect fingerprints, any blood samples, and then they just start working on that evidence that they gathered.
The fact that there was so much blood so far spread around the back room of the bookshop and on the way out indicated the frenzy of the attack, the savagery of the attack, and how many times she had been stabbed so brutally in the back of her head by this long pair of shears.
They identified some blood on a map, a rolled up map. They were also able to identify a belt that was just outside of that west back room that didn't quite fit into the scene. It was just laying on the floor. It was a knockoff Armani Exchange brown belt, 36 to 38 waist size.
That belt had been one of the topics of evidence on all the news stories. It had been put out there. This belt was left at the scene.
And then there was a number of other things, such as books that were collected, blood swabs that were collected, partial fingerprints collected, a palm print that was identified by them and collected. So they did an outstanding job in processing that scene for South Salt Lake.
All of the evidence, as far as the stains and the swabs that were collected, were sent through our typical pathway through the laboratory, where we're able to break open any cells that are within the biological evidence that's collected in order to develop a DNA profile. And we did get what we call a single source DNA profile from the perpetrator, meaning a DNA profile just of that individual, with no other individuals in that particular sample. That can kind of make it a little harder to deal with.
The sea of blood must have been appalling, but it did provide for the investigators not only a lot of blood evidence, but evidence of the nature of the crime, the nature of the killer.
It may possibly be a robbery gone bad. It may have been somebody maybe that Sherry knew or had interacted with at some point that was upset with her about something.
Detectives set out to uncover who brutally murdered Sherry Black, a great-grandmother and beloved member of the local community. Can forensic science unlock the answers and reveal a savage killer? South Salt Lake City, Utah, 2010. Earl Black returns home to his wife's bookstore on their shared property to find her brutally murdered. The beloved 64-year-old great-grandmother, Sherry Black, has been beaten and stabbed to death with kitchen shears. After calling 911, Earl now must deliver the devastating news to the rest of his family.
Heidi had already been concerned because she had tried to call her mother that day. She called her at home, no answer. She called her at the bookshop, no answer.
I just remember having a weird feeling, and that wasn't normal. I mean, I'm sure there were many times that I would call my parents and not get somebody, but usually she would answer her cell phone. And I didn't try to call my dad, which is strange too, but I tried her a number of times. I ran a couple errands. I tried her again. She didn't answer. And I felt something wasn't right.
Sherry had a little pink Motorola flip phone. And to hear Heidi talk about calling and calling and calling and not reaching her mother, I thought of this poignant sense of here's this little pink Motorola phone on the counter somewhere in the bookshop, ringing and ringing and ringing fruitlessly as Heidi's mother lay dead on the floor.
My dad called me and just said, "Someone's killed your mom. Get here quick." And what? Are you kidding? What? And I just did not comprehend. Was she hit by a car? Was she? I didn't really comprehend what he was saying. So my daughter was there. My daughter Alyssa was there, and she drove us down to my parents' house. And I just remember thinking, if I get there fast enough, maybe I can save her. Maybe she's not gone. And that's how I learned.
I found out my grandma had been killed when my younger sister called me. She was hysterical on the phone and told me grandma had been killed. I didn't get a lot of details. I just got that very basic information and loaded up the car and went straight to her house. The street was lined with ambulances and cop cars and crime scene tape, and as I rounded the corner onto that busy street, that's when it started to sink in for me that this was the gravity of the situation.
I just remember the looks on the officers' faces at the time. You knew it impacted them. It had a big impression on them, and they all have moms. And I knew it was important for them to find the person that did this.
Detectives immediately get to work, canvassing the local area in search for this merciless killer.
Right after the crime was committed, police went out to the neighborhood. They collected whatever video footage they could that was available from businesses or home footage, and also talked to people in the neighborhoods. And then they also talked with the media and had the media put out information on the case and that we were looking for a suspect.
Sherry's body is taken to the morgue in the hope that the autopsy will reveal vital clues about the moments leading up to her death.
It's curious about an autopsy. People think of victims as dead, and they are. But an autopsy is where the victim speaks. The victim's body tells the investigators, tells the coroner, clues and things that happened, tells those stories mutely with what happened to the body, the evidence of the wounds, the nature of the wounds, the defensive wounds.
The true extent of Sherry's injuries can now be revealed.
She had a number of stab wounds in the back of her head, and she had a number of stab wounds to her face. There were a few throughout the body. Obviously, the scissors that were embedded in her chest. Her carotid artery was cut on her throat. She sustained multiple bruising, blunt force trauma. She sustained some injuries to her hands, to the inside and outside of her hand, which was described as defensive wounds.
Even though she was initially struck in the back, something happened where she fought back. And all of her grandchildren who were talked to by investigators said she was feisty. One friend called her a tough old broad. and the fact that she would have fought back would not have come as a surprise to them.
Sherry's grieving family and friends come together to say their final goodbyes before she is laid to rest.
To be honest, that whole week after losing her is a bit of a blur. We were all still kind of in shock and trying to wrap our heads around what had happened, and I don't remember a lot of the details. I just remember how heartbroken and shocked and just what an awful time it was.
The first days are just kind of a blur. Luckily, I had a lot of support and people that helped and did a lot of heavy lifting, because you're just trying to survive.
The community was very supportive. We felt a lot of love and a lot of support from the community, not just at that time, but for a long time after. People were very caring and concerned, and that meant a lot.
The investigation into Sherry's tragic death is underway. Detectives look into her personal life to gather a sense of what kind of person she was.
Sherry Black seemed to everybody to be this classic grandmother, great-grandmother who enjoyed her work, who loved her family. She volunteered at the local zoo and helped animals that had been injured. She enjoyed her life. She enjoyed her profession. She'd made a career of herself. It's a very male profession, book buying, book selling, book expertise. And she'd cut this niche for herself with this bookshop and had come to learn a great deal about old books, the value of them, especially about Mormon history.
I don't ever remember hearing her talk bad about anybody. She was just a good, kind person. She loved her family passionately, loved being a mom and loved being a grandma.
My grandma she was a lot of fun. I felt like she was my friend. We had a really close bond and a close connection, and I just loved being with her and hanging out with her. And I remember her taking an interest in the music I liked and dancing with me in the car, and she just was always up for anything, and she was just a great, great time.
When I was in high school, we started taking ballet classes together. It just kind of wasn't my thing, but she continued to go on and got on point and performed, and she was just fearless. Just if there was something that she wanted to do, she learned it and took it on and was great.
From as early as I can remember, we would have sleepovers. We'd go rent a movie and get treats, and she'd make dinner, or we'd have pizza, and we just really enjoyed that time together. It was just really, really special time.
We didn't have a lot of money, but we always had what we needed, and we took fun vacations. We had dirt bikes, and so we had our annual dirt bike trips, and we'd go to the desert, and we went camping a lot. We went on river trips. My parents loved to run rivers. Just a lot of outdoor stuff.
Sherry's gruesome death has rocked the tight community of South Salt Lake City.
Why this woman? Why this place? What reason could it have been? And I think people wanted to find a motive, wanted to find a reason, just to get a sense of closure for, well, could it be me next? If things this random can happen to someone this good, who is safe?
There was a lot of fear because of the unknown. Nobody knew who did this crime. They knew it was horrific. There was a lot of news coverage, and it really did rock the community.
Salt Lake City investigators re-examine the crime scene.
There were no signs of forced entry. This was a bookshop that did not keep a door locked once it was open for business. Nobody had broken down a door to get in. Nobody had picked a lock to get in, which I think helped them to fix the frame of the time of death, the time of the attack, that the door was not locked.
It soon emerges that a male customer arrived at the store that morning.
Based on the information from the telephone call to the customer that had called Sherry at 9:53 a.m., and then when the customer arrived, he indicated that he arrived approximately at 1:30 p.m. as well. So we really have a very short window when this would have occurred. So it would have had to have been after 9:53, and prior to 10:30. So we have less than an hour that everything occurred and this person was gone.
Detectives now believe that Earl may be a suspect.
In all of these cases, quite honestly, everybody is a person of interest or a potential suspect until we can determine that that's not the case, whether it be through interviews, fingerprints, DNA, whatever it may be.
If it looks like it's a crime of passion, many times it's related to a spouse or some other type of person who had a close connection. And that's usually what law enforcement looks at first, is the people that knew the deceased, and then they work their way on a larger scale, looking at others like strangers and people in the community. But usually it starts with who the individual knew at the time.
I don't think it took long to rule him out. He had an alibi and he was distraught, and I think it didn't take long to rule him out.
Earl Black was questioned by police and eliminated on several counts. One of them, the fact that he had an alibi. Another, the really pretty clear-cut evidence from the surveillance cameras at the bookstore when he had left the house in the morning and when he came back several hours later into the bookstore to find his wife dead.
We're going to look at friends and family. We're going to start looking at business associates, customers. We're looking at everything at this point.
Once the family had been ruled out, police began to look at so many other possibilities, specifically a business dispute. In Utah, the business of old Mormon documents and books is very profitable and also very competitive. Some of these books, $1,000, $5,000, or even as much as $50,000. And Sherry had a safe with a lot of these rare and old Mormon books in it. As competitive as this business is, there would be natural reason for police to think that it may have been a competitor or someone who wanted a book and didn't want to pay for it, who had gone into the shop and killed Sherry. But that was a well that also came up dry.
They try to figure out what type of individual would commit this crime, to see if there's any individuals that are in the neighborhood or have a likelihood of committing that type of crime. They will look at people who have just been released from prison, and then they continue to do the media stories so the story doesn't get forgotten by the community, because we always know someone in the community most likely heard or saw something. They just can't relate it to the incident.
She was stabbed 12, 15, 17 times, which to an investigator might suggest this was somebody who knew you and was very angry with you. And that's one of the reasons that police also looked at the circle of people she worked with, the booksellers, anybody she may have encountered in her volunteer work, somebody who might have had some reason to dislike her, to distrust her, to be angry with her, and to attack her.
There was a couple of other cases that initially thought that there were similarities in other states, but ultimately came back and it was not a match either in those cases. But yeah, I mean, I think you're looking everywhere and anywhere for anything that potentially could help in these types of investigations. And it's just important that you try to cover all your bases in order to get the story and hopefully lead us to the perpetrator.
With still no end in sight, will forensics help to find this vicious killer? South Salt Lake City, Utah, 2010. Earl Black returns home to his wife's bookstore on their shared property to find her brutally murdered. 64-year-old great-grandmother Sherry Black has been beaten and stabbed to death with kitchen shears. As Sherry's family struggles to come to terms with their loss, investigators are tasked with finding the man who killed her.
When you're listening to the family say how much hurt they had because what they suffered by losing their mother, their grandmother, but also because the individual had not been apprehended. It created a fear in the family and more heartache because they just wanted some justice.
They kept it in the media, billboards, reward money, trying to solicit tips or any type of leads in the case. They really did everything that they could possibly do to get the information out there and keep the information out there, hoping that leads would come forward or people eventually would maybe speak up and say something to where it might lead investigators to the perpetrator.
Even though the police were very frustrated, they were aided in keeping the case in front of the public by Sherry's family. They would annually hold vigils on the anniversary to remind people that this was still unsolved. They had that immense reward out there of at least $100,000. They were very much front and center in the public eye for years to make sure that Sherry's killer was found and brought to justice.
We had, I think, 86 different individuals or persons of interest DNA samples over the next decade.
Investigators decide to input the killer's DNA sample into CODIS.
CODIS stands for the Combined DNA Index System, and it is a nationwide database of convicted offenders and arrestee samples. It allows us to enter profiles that are developed off of evidence from putative perpetrators in order to potentially identify the individual.
When he was attacking her, he had cut himself, and when he was leaving, he shut the door to the back room where she was and left a partial palm print in his blood on the door. So we had his DNA.
And of course, it's a natural that detectives and investigators would turn to this system to put the DNA into it to see what kind of hits, what kind of reaction it would get, and perhaps find the name, the identity of the killer.
All of those individuals' DNA profiles were compared back to that unknown male DNA profile on the evidence from the crime scene, and none of them matched.
They retrieved DNA. There was some blood on a rolled up map that was leaning against the wall directly next to the doorway leading into the back west room. It was uploaded into CODIS, but unfortunately that did not come back to anybody either. I mean, is it somebody that's young? Could that be the case because they're not in CODIS? Could it be somebody that's never been caught? Is it somebody that has been caught for other crimes but didn't lead up to that? Or is it somebody that has been caught for a violent crime that for whatever reason it was overlooked and their DNA wasn't collected?
The years pass by and little progress is made on the case. Still, Detective Pender refuses to give up and remains in close contact with Sherry's family.
I think the fact that they knew that Sherry wasn't forgotten, that things were happening on the case, and recognizing that sometimes things do take time. At this time, this case in March of 2018 had been transferred over to the Unified Police Department, and I was assigned this case as the lead investigator.
We're a large organization. We have tools that some smaller police departments don't have, and we can dedicate a full-time detective to the case. So I agreed to do that. I had full confidence that our cold case unit could do a lot on the case and most likely solve the case.
That's when I feel like it really, I knew he was working on it. We would meet with him every few months, and he would just go through his notebook and just have pages and pages of things that he was looking into.
Detective Pender had heard about forensic genetic genealogy and had wondered if that was something that could be pursued in this case, since we still had not identified who the perpetrator was. I told him that we did have very good evidence from the crime scene. There was plenty of DNA left over, and that I thought it was a good idea for him to pursue that testing.
In 2015, Detective Pender and his team hear about Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in DNA phenotyping, a process where scientists predict physical characteristics of a person by looking at their DNA.
They can take DNA from a crime scene and they can actually provide us the finished product is with an image and with percentages of images. And what I mean by the image, it's not a photograph, it would be an image of this is maybe the color of the hair they would have and what the percentage that is likely that they have that color of hair or eye color. Those types of things they were able to kind of predict, but with a percentage of confidence as well.
The more details that we can have about a crime, the better. But we don't necessarily need to have that because the DNA is going to tell the story. If we are given the information of where and when that crime occurred, that can really help us narrow down the potential persons of interest. We're looking for someone who has to be a certain age range in order to have been that suspect. And if we can find branches of the family tree that are closer to that crime scene, then those are going to be of higher interest typically than people who live much further away.
The way Parabon reviewed this case is they would actually give it a numbering system. And what I mean by that is they had a number range from 1 to 5. So 1 would be, we could probably solve this overnight, and 5 would be, it's probably not worth you even spending any money on this case because there's no chance we're going to be able to solve this case. So as they reviewed Sherry's case, they came back to me before we decided to go this route. They came back to me and said, we have given this case a 4-. So it definitely caused a little pause, but we have to do whatever we can in any of these types of cases and think outside the box. It was a 4-, but it wasn't a 5. So that gave me some hope that we might be able to do something with this. So my agency and the sheriff agreed to pay for us to start working on this genetic genealogy with Parabon.
We need hundreds of thousands of genetic markers that are called SNPs. So Parabon analyzed that DNA using a more advanced technology than had been used previously. That revealed additional information about this individual. It showed us that he was African American and he had some Puerto Rican ancestry as well.
Once the police put together this DNA composite image of the person they were looking for as Sherry's killer, they put it out into the world and they got 60 different leads. 60 people called and said, I think I know who that is. The police did DNA testing on each of those people and each one of them was excluded as the killer.
It's a devastating blow to the investigation. Over 60 leads from the snapshot phenotype and not a single DNA hit. Despite the odds stacked against them, the case file does not close. Parabon Nanolabs are utilizing a new technique to solve cold cases, investigative genetic genealogy. Can this tool finally reveal Sherry's killer? South Salt Lake City, Utah. Detectives are investigating the 2010 murder of 64-year-old Sherry Black, who was stabbed to death in her bookstore. The case goes cold, but in 2015, Parabon Nanolabs, experts in forensic technology, create a snapshot profile of the killer's physical traits using the DNA left at the scene. Once again, all leads run dry. But in 2018, Parabon utilized groundbreaking techniques to try to solve this case once and for all.
This case took a lot of collaborative work between the genetic genealogist and Detective Ben Pender. This meant that it took about 2 years for us to finally zero in on the right family. So in 2020, the case finally really started moving forward at a fast pace. And we advised Detective Pender to go out to Sacramento to talk to a family that we thought might be closely related to the perpetrator.
One of the individuals that was already on the list that she had asked me to go talk to had all of a sudden kind of rose to the top of the list. Another distant relative had put their information into GEDmatch, which actually brought us a lot closer to this individual. And I was informed this person was residing in the Sacramento, California area and was asked to travel there and meet and try to obtain ancestry information. Also, I was aware that there was an adult son. And again, I was asked to speak with him and obtain his information and see if I couldn't obtain a reference sample from both him and his mother.
Detective Pender decides to speak to the mother first.
When she was asked about a potential family member who may have lived in the Salt Lake City area, She revealed that there was someone from their family that had been placed for adoption. When this woman's son gave the name of the woman he had the relationship with that had placed the son for adoption, we jumped into action. And we ended up finding the obituary for the maternal grandmother of this adopted son.
And in that obituary, it actually says his first and a last name. It said Antonio Spencer. I was looking in our databases and I just could not find anywhere where there was an individual that would match up in the potential age frame of somebody who could have committed this crime. So as we kept looking, I came across something with a first name of Adam Antonio Spencer Durborough. And we were able to determine that he was actually removed at some point when he was young from his mother's custody. He was taken into state custody, had been into foster care, ultimately was adopted by somebody by the last name of Durborough. And I was able to identify who he was. It appeared that he was still living in Utah. He was actually residing south of Salt Lake County, about 25 miles or 25 minutes away from where Earl and Sherry's bookstore was located.
They had a name, Adam Durborough. This was going to be their man, but they had to get the evidence to pull it all together. And what they did was to go after his genetic evidence, his DNA, without him knowing about it. They knew where he worked. They followed him. They saw him order fast food and go back to work. He worked at a Walmart. And they went to his car, photographed the contents of his car, which was a lot of junk food containers, fast food containers, and then were able to get those containers out of his car and take them in for testing. And things like a soda straw showed that exactly what they had predicted was going to be through the testing was true, that Adam Durborough was their man.
As Adam was walking into the Walmart, there was 6 or 7 plainclothes detectives. We had identifiers on jackets and things such as that indicating we were the police. Approached Adam. He immediately put his hands behind his back. He said, "I know what this is about." He indicated that he knew this was about the Sherry Black case. And I get him in my vehicle and let him know that he is under arrest for this homicide and that we are going to be transporting him back to our office to speak with him. You have any idea why you're here today, Adam?
Pretty solid idea.
Okay. The reason you're here today is you're here because of the Sherry Black case. Okay? And we don't have you here because we're wondering if you did it or not. I know you did it, okay? I've been working this case for over 5 years. You've probably even seen me on TV before working this case, but I've been very active in this case, and today's the day really that I wanted to try to have an opportunity to talk to you about the why. It's not a matter of who, it's about the why. I want to be able to talk to the family and tell them, listen, this is what happened and this is why it happened.
This was almost exactly 10 years after Sherry's murder, and Adam Durborough was in a solemn frame of mind, as you would expect, being taken into custody for a murder that had been committed 10 years ago. And he was informed of his Miranda rights, but gradually he started to talk to police about himself, about his family, about his circumstances growing up, and eventually got around to the crime itself.
He indicated that he had a therapy appointment around 11 or 11:30 that day in that general location. And as he was walking by, he said he just happened to notice that bookstore there. He indicated that he had never been in that bookstore before. He loves books, so he decided to go in and take a look at what kind of books were in that store.
I don't know. I was just looking through. There's no one else in the store. It just happened. She was there, and it's a mistake that I wish every day that I had never ever made. When you guys stopped me today, I knew. I mean, I haven't done anything else in my life. but I definitely felt some relief.
By his own admission, she was kind to him, and that's what set him off. I also wonder if her spidey senses, her intuition was kind of telling her that something was off, and that provoked him, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
On October 10th, 2020, they brought us in and told us that they had arrested a person named Adam Durborough in Utah County, and that he was in custody and that he had confessed on his way there.
My sister and I went to the police station, and I remember waiting on the lawn for my parents to finish the meeting. And my parents coming out and saying they got him. They have him. And it was just a huge amount of relief that washed over me, knowing that the person who had done this to her had been caught. It was a great moment.
For 10 years, you wonder what it's going to be like and how you'll feel when you get that answer. And you just can't describe it. I don't have the words for it. It was just such a relief.
So who exactly is Adam Durborough? Investigators dig into his past to get a better sense of the killer.
Adam Durborough had had a difficult upbringing. His father had a criminal record and spent time in prison. He himself was adopted and also spent time with foster care families in the care of the state of Utah.
He had a fairly extensive juvenile criminal history of some violent crimes and other crimes. His adult history, however, there was only 2 arrests that he had, and those were both misdemeanor arrests for theft. So that's all he had as far as his criminal history goes as him being an adult.
His attorney said that he would plead guilty if we would take the death penalty off the table. And that was an easy one for us, because if he would plead guilty, then we wouldn't have to do a trial. And the trial was the thing that I think I was most afraid of. My dad having to testify to finding my mom and just be up on that stand. And, you never know if there's one jury member that finds him not guilty. So for me, I think for our family, it was an easy, if he can spend life without parole, happy to take the death penalty off.
Does the sentencing of life without parole bring a sense of closure to Sherry's family?
I feel like it brought closure for our family. I feel like, we'll never have my mom back. My dad will never have his wife back, and that hurts, and it's really painful. But the 10 years of wanting answers and not getting answers, and always, looking over your shoulder, wondering, is it them? Is that the person? Are we ever going to find the person? And just the anniversary comes around and it opens up the wounds. And so finally having answers has helped us heal and brought us closure. And I think that day, the sentencing, for my dad was a day that he could start to really move forward.
This will be something that I will remember my entire life. But the positive, if there is a positive to come out of this, is the family actually began starting to help others in law enforcement, started a foundation, and are actually out helping others in these types of cases try to resolve their cases as well.
With all we had learned and all the people that we had met and the resources that we had, my husband and I felt like we needed to give back and help other families that are experiencing what we experienced. And so we created the Sherry Black Foundation so that we could help bridge those gaps and bring law enforcement together and promote collaboration and learning and help families get their cases solved. My heart always hurt for families who have loved ones that pass away, that get killed, that don't know how to advocate for themselves or how to get answers or how to get help. And they have to live with what we lived with for 10 years. And it breaks my heart because it's so painful. It's hard to move forward when you don't have those answers. So we just always felt like where we can make a difference and where we can do some good, it's our responsibility.
Detectives reflect on the importance of forensic investigative genetic genealogy in finally bringing answers to Sherry's family.
Could this case have been solved without that? I don't think so. None of the standard connections and questions, family, grudges, motives, none of that happened. It all came up dry. It was just by happenstance that this DNA program, this DNA technology could put this together like solving a puzzle and come up with Adam Durborough's name.
I miss everything about her, and it just kind of depends on the time. I miss just being able to call her and share things with her. I miss sharing. I have 15 grandchildren now, and she loved being a grandma, and I wish I could share those grandkids with her. She would love being a great grandma to them, and she would love watching me be a grandma, and I miss being able to share that with her, and just conversations, it was just easy with her, and I just miss her.